I opened the door to my apartment, dropping my keys into the bowl by the entrance. The smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, a comforting reminder that despite everything, some parts of life still felt predictable. I reached for my phone, expecting to see the usual notifications. But when I unlocked the screen, I was hit with a barrage of texts and missed calls, all from the same three people. Dad, Evelyn, Melissa. I scrolled through the messages first. The tone was frantic, like a fire alarm going off in the middle of my quiet apartment. Did you eat any of the chocolates? What did you think of the chocolates? Please tell me you ate them. It wasn't the first time I'd received a strange message from them, but something about the urgency felt different this time. I sighed, sinking into the couch, tapping my finger against the screen. They'd sent me a box of fancy, handmade chocolates for my birthday, a gesture that could have been nice if I didn't already know their track record. My family had always been complicated, but I had learned over the years that kindness from them always came with strings attached. I glanced at the box sitting on the kitchen counter, untouched. I wasn't sure what they were thinking sending me something like that. I didn't even like chocolate, not much at least, and I had no interest in keeping it. But I knew someone who would. Brandon, my younger brother, 12 years old. The kid was always bouncing off the walls, full of energy. He'd love it, I figured. I snapped a photo of the box and sent it off in a message, gave it to Brandon and the kids. They like sweets. A minute passed. 2. Then the phone rang. Dad. His name lit up the screen. I wasn't surprised. He always called first when something was going on. I answered, pressing the phone to my ear. Did you eat any of the chocolates? His voice shook, the kind of tremble that might come from a man who had just been woken up from a bad dream. I laughed, trying to keep the mood light. No, Dad. I told you. I gave the whole box to Brandon and the kids. They loved it. Silence. A long, uncomfortable silence. Did you eat any? He asked again, his voice cracking. I could barely understand him. No, I already told you, I repeated, the confusion creeping up my spine. Then came the strangest sound, something between a gasp and a sob, and before I could ask what was wrong, the line went dead. I stared at the phone for a moment, unsure of what had just happened. Then the next call came. Evelyn. She didn't even say hello. How much did Brandon eat? Tell me exactly. Her voice wasn't cold anymore. It was frantic, desperate, hysterical. What is going on? I asked, already starting to feel the weight of whatever was happening on the other side of that phone. She sucked in a sharp breath, trying to calm herself. He had at least 5 pieces. The little ones grabbed a bunch too. I felt my stomach drop. This was bizarre. What the hell was going on? Before I could ask her what was really happening, she hung up. My fingers shook as I put the phone down, my mind racing. I had given the chocolates to my brother and the kids. Nothing more, nothing less. Why was everyone acting like I'd just committed some crime? I thought about calling them back, but before I could make up my mind, the phone rang again. This time, it was Melissa. Her voice broke through the line, thick with tears. Sis, please tell me you're lying. Please say you ate some now. My heart pounded in my chest. What's going on, Melissa? Why are you acting like this? She could barely speak. I watched them finish half the box. I didn't touch a single piece. Somebody tell me what the hell is happening. Her voice cracked, and the line went quiet. I stood there, frozen, my mind scrambling to make sense of the chaos that had just unfolded. I didn't understand. None of it made sense. What was it about these chocolates that was making them lose their minds? It was just a damn gift. Why were they acting like this was something more than it was? I grabbed my toothbrush, muttering under my breath. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just overthinking it. But as I stood there in the bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number, Columbus. I picked up. This is Nationwide Children's Hospital Emergency Department. We have your brother Brandon Morrison and your nephews Leighton and Matteo Rivera in critical condition. I froze. Everything inside me stopped moving. My heart dropped into my stomach. What happened? I managed to rasp, my voice thick with panic. We're running full tox screens. We suspect a deliberate poisoning. The children went into sudden seizures and cardiac arrest within minutes of each other. I couldn't breathe. I didn't remember leaving my apartment. Didn't remember driving. The world outside the car window blurred as I raced through the streets, my hands gripping the wheel, heart pounding in my ears. I rushed through the emergency room doors, the automatic whoosh too loud in the silent hall. The antiseptic smell hit me like a punch to the face. I didn't care. I ran. A doctor met me at the triage desk, his face grim under the harsh hospital lights. Your brother's been stabilized, but we're monitoring him closely. The kids are in the ECU. The doctor's words blurred into white noise as my mind reeled. What the hell had happened to them? The last time I'd seen them, they were happily tearing into a box of chocolates. Then it hit me. The chocolates. The one thing they'd all been obsessing over. The one thing they all insisted on knowing about. The moment the realization hit, my body went cold. The chocolates weren't just a gift. They were a weapon. And my family. They were trying to kill me. I sat in the waiting room, my fingers drumming on the edge of the plastic chair. The sterile hospital air seemed to close in around me, thick with the tension I couldn't shake off. My mind was still racing, replaying the phone call. The panic in my family's voices. They hadn't been worried about the kids, not really. They were terrified I hadn't eaten the chocolates. I couldn't stop thinking about that. Why? The nurse had told me to wait, that the children were stable for now. But I wasn't sure I could sit here much longer. I wasn't sure I could breathe without knowing what the hell was going on. I stood up, pacing the room, trying to make sense of it all. How had this gone so far? What had they planned? And why in God's name had they chosen Brandon and the kids as the test subjects? I tried to push the thought from my mind, but it clung to me like a shadow. I pulled out my phone again, my fingers moving before I even knew what I was doing. I didn't care about the missed calls, the dozens of texts, not anymore. I called Brandon's number. It rang once, twice, before his voice came through. Hello. His voice was faint, hoarse, like he'd been through hell. Brandon. I felt the knot in my chest tighten. It's me. Are you okay? There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end. I'm alright, just tired. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm here, kid. I'm not going anywhere. I know, he whispered. They didn't mean for it to happen like this. I stopped pacing, the blood rushing to my ears. What do you mean? What's going on, Brandon? I didn't know. I thought it was just a gift. Just chocolates. I didn't know I didn't know it was for you. I thought they just wanted to make you happy. My heart raced. I didn't understand. Who? What do you mean? Who's they? There was a long, shaky breath from his side. Evelyn. She said you were the only one who was supposed to eat them. She said it was a special treat for you. Told me to give them to you, but not to share. I squeezed my eyes shut, a cold wave washing over me. Brandon, listen to me. Did you eat any of them? Did you eat the chocolates? I didn't. I thought it was for you, so I gave them to the others. Leighton and Matteo. I cut him off. Did you eat any, Brandon? A long pause. I had a few, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I closed my eyes, the truth slowly creeping in, piece by piece. Evelyn had planned this. She had made sure Brandon wouldn't eat them all. She had specifically told him to give them to me, and somehow, I wasn't supposed to make it through the night. It wasn't just about the chocolates. It never was. I tried to steady myself, though my hands were trembling. I didn't know how to explain it, how to put into words the growing panic, the fear that was starting to creep into my bones. It wasn't just the poisoning, it was everything. The money, the inheritance. This wasn't about a birthday gift. It was about control. And it was about time I finally saw it for what it was. I couldn't stay here much longer. The truth was coming faster than I was ready for, and I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to confront them. I had to know what they'd done. I couldn't wait any longer. I was done pretending. I told Brandon to stay put, that I would be there soon, that everything would be okay. But I wasn't sure if that was true. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. I hung up and stepped out of the waiting room. I needed answers, and I was going to get them, even if I had to tear through my family to do it. The drive back to my childhood home felt like a blur. The streets fading away as my mind swirled with thoughts of betrayal, of family secrets I'd never wanted to uncover. I parked in front of the house. The familiar sight of it made my stomach churn. It had been years since I'd stepped inside, since I'd allowed myself to truly feel anything for this place. But now, with everything happening, I wasn't sure I had any more room left for hesitation. I walked up the porch steps, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. The door was unlocked. They hadn't even bothered to lock it. I stepped inside without knocking. Dad was sitting on the couch, his elbows resting on his knees, staring at nothing. He looked older than I remembered, more worn down by the years. Evelyn was pacing in the kitchen, phone gripped tightly in one hand. And Melissa stood by the fireplace, arms wrapped around herself, her eyes swollen and red. The atmosphere in the room was thick, suffocating. No one spoke, no one moved. I didn't bother with greetings. "Brandon's awake," I said, my voice flat, icy. He told me everything. Evelyn froze mid-step. Dad's head snapped up, his face pale, almost sick. Melissa made a small, strangled noise, her eyes wide with fear. I held up my phone. The red record dot blinked back at me. "Start talking." The room felt colder as the silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Evelyn's eyes darted from me to the phone in my hand, her expression faltering. Dad shifted uncomfortably on the couch, avoiding my gaze entirely. Melissa looked like she was about to crumble, her body trembling as she stood near the fireplace, hands gripping her arms like she might fall apart if she let go. I wasn't moving. I wasn't going to break. Not this time. "Start talking," I repeated, my voice a low, calm command. I could feel the weight of their fear pressing in on me, but I held steady. They didn't get to control the narrative anymore. Evelyn swallowed, her lips twitching as she tried to form words. "Kendall, you don't understand. I understand perfectly." I cut her off, my tone sharp, deliberate. "You poisoned the chocolates. You planned to kill me. The question is why." Evelyn froze, her eyes wide now, the mask slipping away. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected me to figure it out so quickly. Her hands trembled, and she stepped back, her foot hitting the corner of the kitchen counter. "I had never meant for it to go this far," she stammered, her voice shaky. Dad finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Evelyn didn't. She didn't mean it to happen like this." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Don't pretend like you didn't know exactly what she was doing. You're complicit in this, Dad. You always have been." I turned to Melissa, her face pale, eyes wide with something between fear and guilt. "You knew too, didn't you?" Her lips trembled, and she took a step back, her face contorting as though she was about to break down. I didn't want this. I never wanted this." "Then why did you let it happen?" My voice cracked like a whip, each word a shard of glass. "You've been trying to steal from me for years. Money. Power. You've always wanted it, but this is something else entirely." "I never," she started, but I cut her off again. "Shut up, Melissa. Just stop pretending. All of you. I'm done letting you lie to me. Done being the one who just goes along with everything, because you say it's what family does." The silence was deafening now, and for the first time, I saw it, guilt in all of their eyes. A flicker of realization. They knew I knew the truth. They knew I wasn't just going to let them off the hook. Evelyn finally spoke again, and this time her voice was colder, more venomous. "You selfish little bitch," she spat. "You always take everything first. The money from your mother, all the inheritance, while the rest of us struggle. You hoard it all for yourself, and when we finally decide to take what's rightfully ours, you turn on us. I clenched my fists, the anger rising like a tide. But I kept my voice steady. It's not your money, Evelyn. It never was. That was my mother's money. She left it for me. Not for you. You think I don't see what you've done. You think I don't know about your debts, the gambling, the loans you've been taking out under my name. You've been stealing from me for years. I could see the way Evelyn's facade cracked, the calm, collected woman slipping into something darker, more dangerous. She stepped forward, closing the distance between us. You were supposed to be the only one who ate them, she sneered. The chocolates were for you, Kendall. No one else. That money from your mother was always meant for us. One heart episode, and it all comes to your father. It was supposed to be so easy. Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. Everything they'd done, every bit of manipulation, every scheme, they'd been playing me for years. And I'd let them. I wanted to scream, to throw something. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting the truth settle into my bones. Dad's voice cut through the tension, weak and defeated. I never told them to stop. He muttered, almost apologetically, his voice hollow. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, I snapped. Because you've never stood up to her. To any of them. You've let them use you for years. I'm not surprised. Evelyn turned on him then, her face twisted with rage. You're still defending her. After everything. You never once tried to protect me, protect us. All you ever did was sit there, staring at your damn phone while we took the fall for everything. Her words were poison, and I saw Dad flinch. It was like watching a man shrink before his wife's wrath, completely defeated. But this wasn't about him. It wasn't about their twisted relationship anymore. This was about justice. About making them face the consequences of what they'd done. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The truth was clear now. The recording I had captured on my phone, the proof of their plan, was all I needed. I looked at Evelyn, then at Dad, and finally at Melissa, who stood there, shaking, unable to meet my gaze. You've confessed to everything, I said coldly, pulling the phone out of my pocket. And I've recorded it all. Every word. They froze. Fear spread across their faces like wildfire. I didn't wait for them to respond. I turned on my heel and walked out of the house without looking back. I didn't need to. I had everything I needed. The game was over. The drive back to my apartment felt like the longest of my life. My mind was a whirlwind of disbelief, anger, and confusion. I had everything I needed, the confession on my phone, the knowledge of their plan. But I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that this wasn't over. It wasn't over for me, and it certainly wasn't over for them. I arrived at my apartment and sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the empty street. I should have been relieved. The weight of everything should have felt lighter, but it didn't. All I felt was the bitter taste of betrayal lingering in the back of my throat. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me. The apartment felt different now, somehow. Quieter, but heavier. Like the walls knew what had just happened. I dropped my keys on the counter and walked straight to the bedroom. I threw open the drawer where I kept my work files and pulled out a plastic evidence bag. It was time to seal up the remains of the chocolates, the ones I'd given to Brandon and the kids. I couldn't get the smell out of my head. The way it had seemed so innocent at first, so harmless. But the truth had hit me hard. It wasn't about the chocolates at all. It never had been. I sealed the bag with the tissue paper and remnants of the box, then grabbed my phone again. I needed to call Gregory. I couldn't waste time. Not anymore. Gregory answered on the second ring. Kendall, what's the status? I took a deep breath. I have the evidence. I need you to move fast. There was a pause on the other end. I'm on it. You have the confession. I do. I could hear him exhale. Good. Get everything you need to the lab. We'll move forward with the search warrants. It's time to shut them down. The words were like a weight lifting off my chest. The legal side of this, Gregory, the prosecutor, the whole team had been set in motion. But the personal side, that was all mine. I had to see them pay for what they did. I spent the next few hours securing the evidence, making sure everything was airtight. It was strange how the pieces of this puzzle, each betrayal, each manipulation, had all fallen into place in the most twisted way. My family had tried to kill me. But what they didn't know was that I was done being the victim. I wasn't the one who'd been trapped in their web for years. I was the one who had freed myself. By the time I was done, it was late, and I was exhausted. But I couldn't sleep. Not yet. Not when everything was finally falling into place. I went back to my phone and pulled up the text from Brandon. I stared at it for a long time, the weight of his words still hanging over me. I thought it was a joke, he had said, and he wasn't wrong. At first, I had thought it was just another bizarre family moment. But now I knew the truth. It wasn't a joke. It never had been. I couldn't blame Brandon. He was just a kid, and he was caught in their sick game. But I could blame myself, in a way, for not seeing it sooner. For trusting them. For letting them pull the strings for so long. I shook my head, pushing those thoughts away. I couldn't afford to dwell on what I hadn't seen. I had to focus on what was ahead. What came next? The next morning, Gregory called me again, and the first thing he said made my blood run cold. "We have the warrants. We're at the house now, Kendall. We found the original shipping receipt. The tissue paper. Everything. I didn't even need to ask. I knew what that meant. My family was about to lose everything, and they would have no one to blame but themselves. I'm on my way," I said, grabbing my jacket and heading out the door. "Get ready. It's about to get ugly." The drive back to the house was quicker this time. I didn't hesitate. I wasn't going there to make peace. I wasn't going there to beg for answers. I was going to tear down every last thing they'd built, and I wasn't going to leave until I'd made sure they couldn't hurt anyone else ever again. I parked in front of the house, the same house I had walked away from so many years ago. It looked just like I remembered, old, rundown, full of memories I didn't want to relive. But I was here now, and I had nothing left to lose. I walked up the porch steps, my boots clicking against the wood. The door was open, and I stepped inside without knocking. The same cold air greeted me, thick with the sense of betrayal. I could hear them moving around in the back room, but no one came to greet me. They didn't need to. I wasn't here to be polite. I stepped into the living room, my eyes scanning the space. And there they were. Dad, sitting on the couch, staring at the floor, unable to look me in the eye. Evelyn, pacing the kitchen, her face drawn tight with worry. Melissa, standing by the window, arms crossed defensively, her posture rigid. It was all so familiar. And yet, nothing had ever felt more foreign. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Your time's up," I said flatly, my eyes locked on each of them, one by one. "You've been lying for too long, and it ends today." Evelyn's eyes flicked nervously to Dad, but he didn't speak. He never did. She took a step forward, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "Kendall, please. We were just worried about you. You know how much we care." I cut her off, my voice cold. "Don't act like you care. You were trying to kill me." Her face turned pale. But I didn't give her a chance to speak. "You had Brandon deliver the poisoned chocolates," I continued, watching her face contort as the truth hit her. "You thought I wouldn't survive. You thought I wouldn't figure it out." I didn't mean for it to go this far," Evelyn stammered, but I wasn't listening anymore. "I know exactly what you meant," I said, pulling out my phone. I hit play, letting the recorded confession fill the room. The sound of her voice, the desperation, the admission of everything they had planned. It echoed through the silence like a death sentence. As her voice filled the room, I saw the color drain from her face. She knew. It was over. I stopped the recording. "You've confessed," I said quietly, my eyes never leaving hers, "and it's all on tape." Evelyn's eyes were wide with fear now, her lips trembling, but I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel anything for her. "I'm done with you," I said, turning on my heel and walking out the door. "And don't ever come near me again." I didn't look back. Not once. When the door clicked shut behind me, I knew it was over. The phone buzzed in my pocket as I walked back to the car, the sound slicing through the air like a knife. I didn't need to look at it to know who it was. It was Gregory. I picked up without hesitation. "What's the update?" "We've got the warrants." "The search is underway." Gregory's voice was crisp, professional, but I could hear the weight of everything they were uncovering in his tone. "Kendall, you were right. We found the receipt, the shipping records, everything. The lab results are in too. The chocolates. Poisoned." I felt a coldness settle into my bones as his words sank in. This wasn't just a sick attempt at revenge. It was deliberate, calculated, and sinister. The cards were all falling into place. It was all there, the proof. My family, the ones I'd trusted for so long, had been plotting my death in plain sight, and I hadn't even known it. "How bad is it?" I asked, my voice flat. The tox screen came back with the exact same cardiotoxic agent we found in the tissue paper. "The same stuff that nearly killed Brandon and the kids," Gregory said, a grim pause hanging between his words. "It's a fast-acting poison. Fatal in most cases." I felt the bile rise in my throat. "Did they try to kill me just for the inheritance?" "Just for control. That's what we're finding," he said. "The financials, the depths. They've been drowning in it for months. Maybe longer. And Evelyn. She's been desperate. The gambling, the loans, the hidden accounts, it's all there." This wasn't just about money. This was about survival for them. The anger flared inside me, hot and fierce. But it was a different kind of anger. I wasn't angry at them anymore. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not realizing how far they would go to tear me down. "I'm not going to let them get away with it," I said, my voice low and steady. "I want them arrested now." "We're already moving on it," Gregory replied. "The police are at the house, securing everything. We're pulling their financial records, and once the prosecutor's office gets involved, it'll be a matter of time before we have everything in place to make arrests." I paused for a moment, letting the weight of it all settle on my shoulders. And what about Brandon? What happens to him? "The state's moving him into protective custody for now. We're securing guardianship for you. I'll make sure everything's in order." I felt a knot in my stomach loosen at his words. Brandon. My little brother, he'd been through enough, and now it was time for me to be the one to protect him. I wouldn't let them take him from me too. "Good, keep me posted, okay?" I said, already turning back to the car. "I need to be there. I need to make sure this ends." Gregory's voice softened. "Kendall, this is it. You're doing the right thing. We're going to make sure they pay for what they did." I hung up and slid my phone into my pocket, my thoughts running a mile a minute. They were going to pay. Every single one of them. I drove to the police station, my heart racing in my chest. I knew what needed to be done. I was going to make sure that this family, the people who had manipulated and betrayed me for years, would never have the power to hurt anyone again. When I arrived, Gregory was already waiting for me. He was sitting in a small conference room, his face serious. But there was a glimmer of something in his eyes that I couldn't place. Hope, maybe. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time, it felt like we were finally winning. "We're moving forward with the arrests," he said as soon as I walked in. "The warrants are being executed as we speak. We've got everything we need." I nodded, pushing down the knot of anxiety in my stomach. "Good. Let's get this over with. I'm done with them." Gregory stood, leading me to the back of the building where the team was preparing to move out. "We'll get them in custody. And then it's just a matter of paperwork. The prosecutor's already on board." I didn't need to hear the rest of the details. I knew how this would go. My family would be arrested, and their lives would be ruined. And as much as I hated to admit it, they deserved it. But something gnawed at me as we walked out of the station and into the car. There was a part of me that wondered how it had gotten this far. How had I let them control my life for so long? How had I allowed them to make me feel so small, so insignificant? I shook the thoughts away. focusing on the road ahead. This was bigger than just me. This wasn't about my pride or my anger. This was about protecting Brandon. This was about making sure that no one else had to suffer the way we had. I knew what I had to do, and it started now. We drove to the house, and I could already see the flashing lights from the police vehicles parked outside. Officers were moving in and out of the front door, collecting evidence, securing the property. It felt surreal, like some twisted version of justice unfolding in front of me. When I stepped out of the car, my heart was pounding in my chest. The house was empty now, the family gone, their lives unraveling piece by piece. I walked up to the front door, the cold night air biting at my skin. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The door swung open, and I was met with the sight of officers leading Evelyn, Dad, and Melissa in handcuffs. Their faces were a picture of shock, of disbelief, but they weren't going to get away with it. Not this time. I stepped forward, locking eyes with Evelyn. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She knew what was coming. And so did I. This was the beginning of the end, and I wouldn't stop until they were all held accountable. The courtroom felt colder than the outside air. The sound of my heels echoing as I walked in. I couldn't shake the nervous energy that pulsed in my chest, even though I knew this was where I needed to be. This was the final step. My family had caused enough damage, but now they were going to face the consequences. I sat down in the front row, beside Gregory, my attorney. My rock through this whole thing. He gave me a quick nod of reassurance, but I could feel the weight of the day pressing in on me. I was here for justice, but that didn't make it any easier. Not when the people in that courtroom, those witnesses, the ones who were supposed to have my back, were the ones who tried to end my life. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. His stern expression reminded me that this wasn't going to be some easy win. They were going to fight, but so was I. I had everything they'd never thought I'd be able to get. Gregory leaned in, speaking low. "This is it, Kendall. It's going to be long, but we have the evidence. They can't walk out of here." I nodded, but my thoughts were elsewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about Brandon. What was he feeling right now? He had been through so much already, but this was his chance at freedom, a chance to move past the horrors of our shared past. The trial began with the prosecution presenting the evidence, the poisoned chocolates, the financial records showing Evelyn's mounting debts, the incriminating phone call recordings. One by one, the facts stacked against them like a well-built tower. There was no room for doubt. I leaned forward, focusing on each word, letting the full weight of everything sink in. It was like hearing the story from a different perspective, as if my body was no longer just a participant, but an observer. The words on the screen weren't just facts anymore. They were the truth. The truth I had been chasing for so long. The expert witnesses were next. The toxicologist testified to the cardiotoxic agent found in the chocolates, the same substance that had been discovered in the tissue paper. My stomach twisted as the details were laid bare for all to hear, the slow, deliberate poisoning that had been meant for me. But it wasn't just about the poison. It wasn't just about the chocolates. It was everything they had done to destroy me, to destroy us. When Brandon's turn came, my heart skipped a beat. He stood up from the witness box, his frame so much smaller than I remembered. But his eyes were steady, focused, and when he spoke, his voice rang out clear. I didn't know what was going on, he began, his words slow but precise. They told me it was for Kendall. That the chocolates were only for her. They said I wasn't supposed to eat them. But I thought it was just a joke. Until I saw what happened to her, what happened to us. His words were raw. Full of the hurt he'd carried for so long, and I could see the fear in his eyes. He wasn't just speaking about what had happened to him. He was speaking about the years they'd stolen from him. The years they'd stolen from both of us. Evelyn told me not to tell anyone. She told me it was just for Kendall. And then, his voice cracked for a moment before he regained his composure. Then everything happened. The poison. The hospital. I didn't know. I could hear the murmurs in the courtroom. The jurors, the audience, they were all listening to every word. Every broken piece of Brandon's story falling into place. I knew what came next. The defense was going to try to tear him down. They were going to try to discredit him, make him seem like a child who didn't understand what was happening. But I was already ahead of them. I already knew what they were going to say, and I wasn't going to let them. The defense attorney, a slick, well-dressed man with a perfect smile, stood up and walked to the front. His voice was smooth, calculated, as he tried to plant seeds of doubt. "Brandon," he said, his tone condescending, "how can we trust your testimony? You're just a child. You didn't know what was happening. You were just following orders." I saw Brandon's hands tremble, but he stood his ground. He didn't let the lawyer's words shake him. "I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know what they tried to do," he said. His voice steady despite the nerves I could see creeping up behind his eyes. The defense attorney tried again, pushing harder, but Brandon wasn't backing down. I could see the weight of the truth in his words, the determination to make it clear that his family hadn't just failed him. They had betrayed him, tried to kill him. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up with a purpose. I wasn't here to argue with them. I wasn't here to make excuses for anything. I was here to make sure they paid. I walked to the stand with calm steps, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. I've been living under the shadow of my family's lies for years. I began, my voice clear and unwavering. I've watched them manipulate me, control me. And now I know it was all to get what they wanted, my inheritance. My life. I let the silence stretch between us, letting the weight of my words sink in. The jury was watching me now, listening, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand. My family tried to kill me. They tried to kill my brother. They did it because they wanted control. They wanted what was mine. And I'm here to make sure they never get the chance to hurt anyone again. The courtroom was still. The silence stretched on as I let my words settle, the truth hanging in the air. I could see the defense's lawyer shifting uncomfortably. But I didn't look at him. I was done with him, done with all of them. The trial continued, but I felt the shift. I felt the weight of the case turning in my favor. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one who had control. When the verdict came, the courtroom was silent, the tension almost unbearable. It took the jury just 4 hours to deliberate. And when they returned, the foreman stood up. "We, the jury, find the defendants guilty on all charges." The words hit like a blow to the chest. But this time, it wasn't pain. It was relief. The justice I'd been fighting for. The victory I had finally earned. I glanced at Brandon. His face was a mixture of disbelief and relief, but when he looked at me, his eyes shone with gratitude. We had done it. We had won. And as I walked out of that courtroom, the weight of the past finally began to lift. The days following the trial felt like a blur. The courtroom was still fresh in my mind, the heavy weight of the guilty verdict hanging in the air like a dark cloud. But as the world around me began to settle, I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside me had finally snapped into place. It was like a switch had flipped, and I was no longer the person who'd been manipulated and controlled. I was the one in control now. I sat in my apartment, the soft hum of the city outside my window, the only sound in the quiet room. My hands were steady now, no longer shaking with anger or fear. It had been a long time since I'd felt this calm, this certain. The decision to walk away from my family was final. I wasn't looking back. Brandon was still adjusting. I could see it in his eyes, the wariness that hadn't quite faded. He hadn't spoken much about the trial, about everything we'd gone through. But I knew he was processing it in his own way. He had to. The phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw Gregory's name. My stomach tightened slightly, but I answered it. Everything okay?" I asked, my voice steady, but I could hear the lingering edge of anticipation. "Yeah, it's all going according to plan," Gregory said. "The court orders are being processed for Brandon's custody, and the financials are locked down. The trust is secure. It's all working." "Good," I replied, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. "How's everything with the family?" There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost hear Gregory's hesitation. "Well, they're not taking it well. The arrest records are a matter of public record now, and I cut him off. I don't care about them. I'm done with them, Gregory. I just want to make sure Brandon's safe. I want to make sure nothing they've done can hurt him again." "I get it," Gregory said, his tone softening. "It's all in place. We've got the protective custody orders filed, and I'll make sure there's no chance for them to contest anything. They'll be behind bars for a long time. Kendall." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. The finality in his words was what I needed to hear. "I'm moving ahead with the guardianship petition today," he added. "We're going to make sure everything is legally solid for you. You're his legal guardian now. You've earned that." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I had earned that. I'd earned every single ounce of peace that was coming my way. The past felt so far away now, and it was becoming harder to remember the person I had been before all of this. I glanced across the room where Brandon sat on the couch, flipping through a textbook, his focus distant. He'd been spending a lot of time there lately, just sitting, not talking much. It was hard to watch, but I understood. Healing wasn't something that happened overnight. I set the phone down and stood, walking over to him slowly. I didn't want to crowd him, didn't want to push him, but I couldn't let him sit in silence forever. "Hey," I said quietly, sitting down beside him on the couch. He looked up, surprised, but a small smile crept onto his face. "Hey," he replied, his voice rough from lack of use. "What's up?" I leaned back, stretching my legs out. "Just wanted to check in. You doing okay?" Brandon shrugged, the movement small, as if he was trying to downplay the weight of everything. "I guess. It's just weird. Everything's changed. I don't even know what to do with myself anymore." I understood that. The life he had known, the life that had been poisoned by lies and manipulation, was gone. But I wasn't going to let him sit in the dark forever. "It's okay to feel like that," I said softly. "It's okay to not have all the answers. But I'm here, and we'll figure it out. Together." Brandon's eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, he seemed to relax. "I know. I don't know how to move on from everything. How do you just forget about all that stuff? All the stuff they put us through?" I could feel the weight of his question settle into my chest, but I had an answer. I had to. "You don't forget, Brandon. You don't erase it. But you learn how to live with it. And you learn how to stop letting them control you." He nodded slowly, his eyes focused on the floor. I reached out and placed my hand on his, squeezing it gently. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice steady and calm. "And I'm not going to let anyone hurt you again. Not ever. We have each other now. That's all that matters." Brandon squeezed my hand back, his grip strong, though his fingers trembled slightly. "Thanks, Kendall." I smiled, leaning in to give him a quick hug. It wasn't much, but it was something. And for right now, that was all we needed. We didn't need to fix everything all at once. Healing wasn't a race. But we had the time, and we had each other. The next few days were a whirlwind. We filled out paperwork, met with lawyers, and made sure everything was in order. The house, the one I'd grown up in, the one full of all those bad memories, was sold. It wasn't a home anymore, not for me, not for Brandon. And I was okay with that. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I stood in front of the judge at the family court hearing. Brandon was officially mine, his future sealed. The words permanent guardianship were spoken, and just like that, he was my responsibility, my family. I watched as Brandon's face lit up when the judge gave him a nod of approval. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw the weight on his shoulders lift. He was free. We walked out of the courtroom together, the finality of it all setting in. And as we stepped out into the crisp air, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me. I had fought for this moment, and I'd won. We'd won. We were free. And now it was time to rebuild. Together. It's strange how life can change in an instant. One moment, you're trapped in a nightmare. And the next, you're walking away from it, free to start over. I thought I understood what freedom was when the verdict was read, when the shackles of my family's control finally broke. But freedom, true freedom, wasn't about leaving the past behind. It was about learning how to live without the weight of it hanging over you. Brandon and I had spent the last few weeks trying to find a new rhythm. His first few days living with me had been quiet. He was still processing everything. Still trying to come to terms with what had happened, but I could see the change in him. He wasn't the same kid who had walked into that courtroom. He was stronger now, more confident. The fear in his eyes was starting to fade, replaced by something else, something I hadn't seen in a long time. We spent our weekends together. Sometimes we just sat on the couch, watching movies, pretending like nothing had changed. Other times, we went out, exploring the city, finding new places to eat or just driving around, the windows down, the wind in our hair. Simple things. Things that had never felt possible before. One afternoon, after a long walk in the park, we sat down at a bench overlooking the river. The city was quiet for once, the noise of the world seeming miles away. I could hear Brandon's soft breathing beside me, the faint rustle of the leaves in the breeze. "Do you think they ever think about us?" he asked, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. I didn't need to ask who he meant. I knew exactly who he was talking about. "I think they probably do," I said softly. "But I don't think it matters anymore. We can't change them. We can't fix them. We're not responsible for their choices." He nodded, his eyes focused on the water. It doesn't make sense to me. Why they did it. Why they tried to hurt us. I don't think they ever saw us as people, Brandon," I said, my voice steady. "To them, we were just obstacles in their way. Something to control, something to manipulate. But we're not like them. We don't think that way." I glanced over at him, watching his profile as he stared at the water, lost in thought. It wasn't just the past that haunted him. It was everything they'd stolen from him. His childhood, his trust, his sense of safety. But we were going to fix that. We were going to rebuild. One piece at a time. "You know," I said after a beat, "I think you're going to be great. You're already so much stronger than they ever gave you credit for." Brandon turned to look at me, his eyes wide. "You really think so?" "I know so," I said, smiling. "You're going to do amazing things. And when you do, I'll be right here, cheering you on." He smiled back at me, a real smile this time. Not the cautious one he had been wearing before. For the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. A few weeks later, I watched him walk across the stage at his high school graduation, his navy blue cap and gown swallowing him whole. His head was held high, his steps confident. I could feel the weight of that moment in my chest, the pride and love for the person he had become. He spotted me in the crowd and gave me a small wave, and I waved back, my heart swelling. I had never imagined this moment, this future, when I was caught in the turmoil of the past. But here it was, and it was better than anything I could have dreamed. After the ceremony, we went out to dinner at his favorite restaurant. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. He was talking more than he ever had before. Telling me about his plans for the future, about the college applications he had already started. He was already looking ahead, already planning for the life he deserved. When he finally turned to me, his eyes shining with excitement, he asked, "So, what now?" I smiled, lifting my glass. "Now, you build whatever life you want, and I get to watch." Brandon chuckled, a light, carefree sound that filled the space between us. "I think I can handle that," he said. We clinked our glasses together, and for the first time, I felt that true sense of peace wash over me. This was it. This was what we had fought for. The world outside the restaurant was beginning to fade into the soft glow of dusk. The city lights, twinkling like stars, scattered across the horizon. I looked at Brandon, watching as he took in the world around him, and I realized something. This wasn't just my victory. This was ours. And as we left the restaurant, walking side by side into the unknown future, I knew one thing for certain: we were going to be okay. Not just okay. We were going to be better than okay. We were going to thrive. And this time, the past had no hold over us.